start things off, I'm going to go over the basic terminology and layout used by CAD software, and then go through the basic workflow used to create parts in CAD. So here we have a blank document open in Fusion 360. And when creating something in CAD, there are going to be two main steps used repeatedly to create parts. There will be creating a sketch, and then there will be performing one or more 3D operations based on that sketch. So I will start off showing that in Fusion 360. So the first step will be creating our first sketch. And what this will be is a 2D profile showing one view of our part. So let's say I want to start by making a flat bracket that's just like a rectangular shape with some holes and slots in it. So I'll say create sketch, and let's just say this horizontal plane here so that we're looking down at the top of the part. So select that, and then use this cube in the top right to select top, so we're looking straight at the sketch. Now when you open it, it will be blank except for this one origin point, and that's where you'll start building your sketch from. So I said we wanted to do a rectangular bracket, so I'll start by selecting this rectangle. I'll draw that. Let's say we want to put in a couple holes up here, and then maybe a slot in the middle and another hole here. So now we have a basic sketch with some different elements, but right now everything's just kind of placed where it looks right, and we need to go through and set the actual locations and sizes. So the main way you'll do that is with this dimension tool, or you can also in some cases use geometric constraints as well. So let's say that I want, start off, let's make all the holes equal size. So say equal this hole to this hole and this hole to this hole. And then we'll switch over to the dimension and say this hole needs to be a certain size. We want the bracket to maybe be 2 inches by 3 inches. We want these holes placed in a certain location relative to the edges, and so on. Now we have everything dimensioned and positioned in place. And there's many more operations you can do in the sketch environment. If you click on this drop down, you can see you can create different polygons, slots, arc shapes, circles, text even, and then some options for mirroring or patterning different sketch elements. So there's really a lot of freedom with what kind of shapes you can lay out here. So now that we're done with this, let's say finish sketch. So there's our finished sketch. Now before I move on to the 3D operation on the sketch, I want to point out a couple aspects of the CAD software's user interface. So in Fusion 360 on the left, you'll have this feature tree. And what that will contain is all the different items that you've put into your model. So like your sketches, 3D bodies, if you had any other like reference planes that you defined, they'll all show up here. So you can see right now we have a folder of sketches with our sketch 1 that we created. There also was the origin reference feature that was auto-defined and that we used in the beginning to select as the start plane for our sketch. And you can hide and show these different folders or collapse them as you see fit. The other part of the interface to notice is this timeline at the bottom. And this is showing the exact sequence used to create every element in your file. So right now there's just one thing, that sketch we created. But as we do more operations, you'll see them start stacking up here. So what this timeline lets you do is not only see the steps used to build your part, but also roll back in time through those steps and edit each one to make updates to your part. So now we have our first sketch. So let's now do our first 3D operation. And the basic 3D operation is Extrude, which lets you take a 2D profile and extend it into the third dimension. So on our sketch, if you roll over, you can see there's a number of different 2D profiles that we could select. So let's pick Extrude, select this main profile, and then click and drag that up. And let's say we want to type in that it's 1/4 inch. So now we see that our part has been extended into 3D. And you can click and drag on this cube in the top right to rotate it around and see it from different angles. So now you see in the left that we have a 3D body in our feature tree. Now at this point we could either create a new sketch to add an additional feature that wasn't in our first sketch, or we can do additional 3D operations. So let's say I wanted to add a hole through this part from the side. So if I wanted to do that, I'd create a new sketch, select that side, look at that. I know I want the hole to be right in the middle in this case, so I'm going to use a line that with some automatically snapped constraints to those midpoints, a circle here, put a dimension on it, and then one other quick feature you can do in Sketch is if you select a line, you can use this button to change it to construction, which means it won't impact those 2D profiles when you roll over it. Just makes it easier to select the regions you want when you're extruding, since now this is just one circle, not 2 half circles. So we'll say Finish Sketch, rotate this back to 3D, and then use another extrude operation from here. This time, instead of by distance, let's do to object and say the other side of this part. And you can see since we're going through a part, it defaulted to be a cut operation, which you can mess with a lot of these settings depending on what direction you want to go, how you want to set how far it goes, and then if you want it to be joining to make a new, to add something to the body, or if you want it to be cutting to remove something from the body. So now looking at our tree, we have 2 sketches. They both did operations on our one body. And looking at our timeline, we have a sketch, and then the extrude that used it, and then a sketch, and then the extrude that used it. And now at any point, we can go look at this timeline, step back through it, see that sequence of operations, and also double click on anything here and modify it. So let's say I wanted to take our first extrude and make it 1/2 inch. And you can see it cleanly updated and then reapplied this second cut operation where it was supposed to. So again, in the 3D modeling environment, there's a lot of other features you can explore in these drop-downs. So if you wanted to sweep a profile along a path rather than extruding it in a straight line, rotate about an axis, cut the threads, cut holes based on standard fastener sizes, and so on. There's also a large set of operations you can use to modify a part. So, for example, a common one would be a fillet operation, which I'll go ahead and select, which lets you pick some corners in your part, both internal or external corners. So I'll select all these, and then give them a radius, say 1/4 inch. You can see that popped up in our timeline down here. And there's many other options you can explore here as well. Chamfer for beveled corners, shell to make something a thin shell, even scaling a part up or down or splitting it along a plane. So that's the basic steps needed to create a part in CAD. Basically, you'll create a sketch showing one view of the part. You'll do a 3D operation like extrude to make it 3-dimensional. And then you'll keep repeating that process, making sketches from other angles and using more extrude operations, or using different things like fillet and chamfer to modify your part and add on certain types of features. So going forward in future videos, I'll first take a step back and look at how I decide on numbering systems and how I organize my projects to keep everything as cleaned as possible and easy to work on. And then I'll get back into making things in Fusion 360 and how to work with multi-part assemblies and do some more advanced design of different mechanisms and structures.